If you are planning your first Camino, then this video is for you. And if you're a little bit nervous and want some guidance, I'm more than happy to help. So come on in and let me share some wisdom with you as a 3-time pilgrim on the Camino de Santiago. Hi, I'm Jen. Let me start out by saying this is not a video that is going to give you a gear checklist that will encourage you to book everything ahead. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. These are just some things I wish I had known or that I wish people knew, culled from my experience on 3 Caminos. I've walked the Francis, the Portuguese, and the Inglés, so I have a variety of experiences in different lengths of Caminos, different routes. And so all of this is just meant to help you feel more secure about taking that first step. I also want to acknowledge that it's totally fine to feel a mixture of excitement, but also nervousness. This is the nature of the Camino, right? Taking some steps, some first steps, is what's going to actually get you on the way and moving and having what I think could be the greatest experience of your life. I've got 6 basic categories of things I'm going to talk about today, and hopefully at least some of them will be useful to you. My number one thing, which is interesting given that this is a planning video, is I don't want you to overplan. I don't want you to underplan, so it's good that you're here, but I also don't want you to overplan because the biggest gift of the Camino is in letting go of control and surrendering. And it's really hard to do that when you have a plan that you were holding on to super tightly. So let's just set that up from the very beginning. Plan some, but don't overplan, and know that things are going to change and the Camino is going to unfold in front of you. So what does that mean? That means you need to do some logistical things like how to get there, where you want to start, which route you want to do, what time of year you want to go, that sort of thing. So those plans, useful, very useful. What I mean by don't overplan primarily is don't overbook. Don't book everything out there in front of you because that actually locks you in and doesn't allow you to have your experience guide what your next steps are. And I think that that's a huge benefit of the Camino, and I want you to experience that. So don't book everything in advance. Don't panic. There is enough space for everyone to stay on the Camino. You will be okay. Second point related to the first point is you should do some training, but you don't need to overtrain. So the Camino is this weird mixture of it's just a walk, it's not that hard, to it's a lot of walking and it's harder than you think. The reality is somewhere in between those two. So I just encourage you to have done a little bit of walking or know, like if you already have a regular walking practice, that's great. If you don't, you might want to try that. I do recommend some incline training because I did not do that on my first Camino because I lived in Chicago, which is pretty flat if you weren't aware. That made my first few days a little trickier than I think that they could have been, but the level and amount of training you need varies widely from person to person. So I just would encourage you to take a little bit of time to figure that out, but don't overly obsess with it because you're never going to be fully prepared for the Camino because it's so different from what you're usually used to unless you walk the Camino every day, which is awesome. And don't we all wish we could do that? But also because the Camino itself provides training. When I walked the Francis, so I walked for 6 weeks. The first 2 weeks prepare you physically as you get used to all of this walking and you're going up and down. The second 2 weeks prepared you mentally because now you're just sort of in this rhythm and you're on the Mesita, which has a very different vibe. And the last 2 weeks were really like spiritual preparation for reflecting on the 4 weeks that had happened before, but also about the preparing for the arrival in Santiago. So I highly recommend the Francis, but I know not everyone has the time. The point is that the Camino will train you. Right. Third category, what to pack. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you this is your list of things or this is the kind of backpacker shoes. I am going to tell you that less is more. You do not need as much as you think you need, period. You want to have a change of clothes. You want to make sure you have something to sleep in, like a sleeping bag liner or a sleeping bag itself. You need a pair of shoes. You probably need a toothbrush just to be kind to others around you. Good oral hygiene is important. You probably need a towel. One thing that I remember I had no idea was not readily available or normal was a washcloth. And I hadn't really thought about showering without a washcloth. So point being, you need less than you think. And by taking less than you think, you actually uncover a little bit more about what you really need, and you open up space for other people to help provide you with what you need. So it actually gives you room for receiving things with gratitude. And that, I think, is an important aspect of the Camino. I think everyone overstresses about packing because it's the one thing we feel like we can control before we hit the trail. Don't get super caught up in trying to find the perfect thing or like have the exact backpack gather the advice, listen to the thing. I mean, I can give you a list of things that I found useful, right? I had a rubber stopper for the sink in case I need to do laundry. I had safety pins so I could pin my wet socks to my backpack. I had a spork, which is one of my favorite things ever. I do recommend a spork. Also, when you're considering packing, don't forget the weight of water. Give yourself room for an actual necessity like water. I also am going to put in a plug for hiking poles. They were super useful for me, mostly actually on downhills because I have some wonky knees and there are a lot of steep descents. And so whether that means you already have some and you bring them with you or you buy them while you're in Spain, I bought mine in France and I still use them to this day. You don't have to spend a lot to still have something that's very useful in terms of supporting yourself and making it possible for you to continue the journey. I do endorse hiking poles. The fourth category of things I would say is I would encourage you to stay in a range of types of accommodations. So some people think it's albergues or nothing. Some people are like booking private rooms all on the way. I honestly suggest a mixture because there's just different types of experiences and you're going to miss out on some really wonderful experiences if you don't allow yourself some of that flexibility. I know that sleeping in a giant room full of bunk beds of snoring people is not everyone's idea of a good time, but honestly, it's a bonding experience. I will say I had the best night's sleep on the Camino in the giant bunk room at the Samos Monastery. It was like the mattresses were this thick. It was a room full of like 60 people, and I slept like a rock. I also had a wonderful time at a parochial albergue in Viana, which was just mats on the floor of a room. That was just a great communal experience. We all cooked dinner together and we're celebrating a birthday. And it was just one of my favorite memories, even though it was the most basic accommodations I think I had on the entire trail. It's also totally fine to want a room for yourself every now and then, to be able to have an uninterrupted night's sleep, to have your own bathroom, to take a shower as long as you want. You know, these are things that you can also do. There's no one pilgrim is better than another for these kinds of choices. But I think the kinds of experiences that you have in the different types of accommodations are worth having. Like, have that variety. Don't lock yourself into just one particular kind. Fifth thing, I am actually a really big proponent of doing the Camino with as little tech as possible. When I walked the Camino Frances I walked in 2011. I had a flip phone. I didn't have a smartphone, and I did not use it the entire trip. I used my guidebook and I had yellow markers along the way to find the route. I did use the computers at the albergues on occasion to like write an email home to let my family know I was okay. I had a Kindle to read books because it was lighter than lugging books around and I love to read. So like I'm not anti-tech, but I think a huge benefit of the Camino is, again, realizing what do we actually need. Do you need to be that connected to this device, to have it always on, to have you always accessible? I say no. I think you're going to get a lot more out of your Camino if you really, really minimize that. I know that there are some wonderful Pilgrim Camino apps out there. I've never used one. I'm a Brierley girl. I always had my John Brierley guidebooks. There's something that I like about having a map in my hands that I can read if I need to, or if I'm trying to plan the next day to see how far do I think I'm going to walk. But then I like putting that away and just letting the path unfold in front of me. Part of the grace of the Camino is allowing us to reconnect to the present moment, to what we're actually experiencing, and technology can take us away from that. So my final point is kind of goes back to the first one about planning, but it's about picking the right Camino route for you. People say they're going to walk the Camino. What does that mean? There's so many different ones. There's so many different routes. There's different starting points. There aren't really any starting points. It's just like, when do you get on the path? They have a shared destination, but there's not a common starting point. Thinking about how much time you have, thinking about your level of physicality, thinking about whether you want to be around a lot of people or if you're really looking for solitude. Both of those are available on any route, but some routes are more popular than others and more crowded than others. That's something to keep in mind. Don't be upset if you can't walk a long Camino. A short Camino is better than no Camino. It still works. It's magic. I've walked 2 week-long Caminos because that was the only time that I had. But I had started out by walking the Camino Frances, starting in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. I mean, if you can do that, I encourage you to do a Camino that long. But I've also had really transformational experiences from my 2 week-long Caminos as well. So don't overstress about doing the right Camino or doing the Camino that everyone else does, or want to do the Camino that no one else does. Like everyone has different reasons for why they want to walk a Camino. And what you want to try and do is think about what kind of experience do you want to have, and then look a little bit at the different routes that have been laid out. But don't let anyone talk you out of doing a particular Camino, and don't let anyone talk you into doing a Camino that you aren't really feeling called to, right? Like, do the one that fits who you are in this present moment. One last thought: people sometimes worry about walking alone on the Camino. So I was a solo pilgrim 2 of my 3 trips, but you're never alone on the Camino, ever. Even if you choose to be alone on the Camino, that you're still on a path with other people. And so it's one of the easiest places to meet and fall into conversation with people. I think you have a different depth of conversation with people because everyone is stripped away from their usual self. Who you are is more important than like what your job is or, you know, what your family life is like. Like it's who are you in this moment on the Camino? And that opens up a level of conversation. I wouldn't be afraid of walking alone because you'll be lonely. And I wouldn't be afraid of walking alone because you think it's unsafe, because this is super safe. Nothing is 100% safe. There are still bad things that happen because it's the world, and bad things happen in the world. But it is not a situation where you need to be worried about being alone and therefore being targeted. You can be smart and you can be safe, and pilgrims look out for each other. So don't let being a solo pilgrim stop you from going. So ultimately, what I hope you take away from this video is that it's okay to not have it all figured out. In fact, it's better to not have it all figured out, to let yourself have a Camino that unfolds in front of you. If you would like any help preparing for your Camino, I do offer coaching, but most importantly, I have a free Camino reflection guide that's available in the description below. It's just a set of 10 questions you can ask yourself to help you prepare with that sort of interior spiritual aspect of the Camino. Everyone gets really caught up in the practicalities. I did too. I did not do as much mental preparation as I wish I had when I walked my Camino. And so I created this guide to help people ask some questions so that you can have a deeper and richer experience of something that is already going to be incredibly important and fruitful in your life. So wherever you are on your way, whether you are planning or are on the Camino or have returned, I wish each and every one of you a Buen Camino, and I hope that I see you on the way.